There is a phone, stashed in a secure location, turned off, hidden somewhere that the writer describes as easy to find, if you know where to look. On that phone, according to a new letter received by TMZ on June 26th, is a short video of the main guy with Nancy on the day that was probably her last, photos of both people involved, names, addresses, ages. And the sender wants 1 Bitcoin, currently approximately $60,000, to hand over the phone's location and its passcode on a silver platter. The letter came from the same email address that has been sending messages to TMZ since the early weeks of Nancy's disappearance. The same Bitcoin address referenced in earlier communications. And the writer identified themselves explicitly. I am not the idiot who recently called in a tip about her burial site in Mexico. This is Forensic Disconnect. Day 147. And today we are going to go through the full picture of the new letter, what the sheriff said about it, what TMZ's own executive producer said the FBI has told them, and why this development, whether authentic or not, changes the specific landscape of this investigation in a specific and important way. Before we go further, subscribe and hit the notification bell. Day 147. Subscribe. Let's start with the letter itself. Because the specific content of what TMZ received on June 26th is more detailed and more specific than anything that has come through this channel before. TMZ founder Harvey Levin announced the new communication in a nearly 5-minute video. The letter claims the sender knows the identities of 2 people responsible for Nancy's kidnapping, not 1 person, 2. The same claim of 2 perpetrators that earlier communications to TMZ had made, and a claim that is consistent with the behavioral analysis of the original masked figure, which some analysts have suggested may have involved coordination between the porch guy and at least 1 additional person. The phone contains a short video of the main guy with Nancy on the day that was probably her last. That specific phrase, probably her last, is significant. It suggests the video was taken on or around February 1st, the day Nancy was abducted, not weeks before, not weeks after, around the day she disappeared, and it shows Nancy with one of the alleged kidnappers. If that video exists, if a phone stashed in a secure location actually contains footage of Nancy Guthrie with a person connected to her abduction on February 1st, it is the most significant piece of physical evidence in this entire investigation, not digital forensics, not DNA. A video showing Nancy with the person who took her on the day she disappeared. The phone also allegedly contains photographs of both people involved, and names, addresses, and ages. Names, addresses, ages. The sender wants 1 Bitcoin for the location of the phone and the passcode. 1 Bitcoin is currently approximately $60,000. For evidence that, if authentic, would identify the people who abducted and inadvertently killed an 84-year-old woman and ended a national search that is now in its 147th day. Now let's go to Sheriff Nanos' immediate response, because Nanos did not wait. He appeared on KVOI AM 1030's Buckmaster show on Friday and said what he thinks about the new letter. He said, I think the FBI has done a number of arrests for false or fake ransom notes. It's a shame that happens, but I think we're looking at another one of those today. Another one of those. Nanos is categorizing the new letter as a fake, as part of the pattern of fraudulent communications that every high-profile kidnapping case generates. He is saying publicly, on the record, that he believes this letter is not authentic. But let's examine that assessment carefully, because the specific dismissal Nanos offered does not address the specific features of this letter that distinguish it from generic fraud. The letter came from the same email address as previous communications to TMZ. That same email address had previously sent information that was specific and accurate, including details about what Nancy was wearing on the night she was taken. That previous communication contained verifiable, accurate, case-specific information that distinguished it from generic fraud. The new letter is not a cold communication from an unknown source. It is a continuation of a correspondence that has demonstrated case-specific knowledge before. TMZ executive producer Charles Latibaudiere told Elizabeth Vargas Reports that there are certain things the FBI doesn't want them to share with the public at this point about this new communication. certain things the FBI doesn't want public. That specific statement, from the outlet receiving the communications about the FBI's specific request for information management, suggests the FBI is not simply dismissing this as fraud. If the FBI had fully dismissed the communication as fake, there would be nothing to protect from public disclosure. The specific restraint on what TMZ can share publicly implies that the FBI considers some element of the new communication potentially sensitive. He can't reach us by email. We're basically just waiting whenever he decides he wants to send these emails to us. The sender has no direct contact channel with TMZ. The emails arrive without a return address or a reliable contact mechanism. This dynamic, where the sender controls the timing and content of communications and TMZ simply receives them, is the operational structure of someone who is trying to maintain a specific level of information control. And the sender explicitly denied being the person who sent the Mexico tip. I am not the idiot who recently called in a tip about her burial site in Mexico. That specific denial, distancing themselves from the Mariposa tip that produced the unmarked grave story, is the communication of someone who wants their information to be taken more seriously than the Mexico tip was. Someone who is aware of the public narrative and is trying to position their own communication as more credible. That specific awareness of the case's public narrative, the Mariposa tip, the grave, the media coverage, is the specific feature of this communication that distinguishes it from generic fraud. A fraudulent communication generated by someone with no actual knowledge of the case would not specifically reference and deny involvement in another recent development in the case. Now let's go to the Bitcoin dimension. Because the sender's demand for 1 Bitcoin, and the specific way that demand was structured, is worth examining in the context of the earlier ransom demands. The original ransom notes demanded millions of dollars in Bitcoin, a $4 million demand. The investigation has been monitoring the Bitcoin wallet associated with those notes. The wallet received approximately $150 in Bitcoin, believed to be from investigators trying to maintain contact with the sender, but has never received the full ransom amount. The money has never been touched. The new letter comes with a new Bitcoin address, not the original ransom wallet. A new address, for a much smaller demand. 1 Bitcoin, $60,000, not $4 million. This specific change in the scale of the demand is forensically interesting. The original ransom was set at a level consistent with someone who believed they had a living hostage. $1 million plus demand because the commodity was worth that amount. The new demand, 1 Bitcoin for a phone with names and addresses, is a very different kind of transaction. It is not ransom, it is the price of information. The shift from ransom to information sale is consistent with the timeline this case has produced. The second note said Nancy was buried in nature now. If the original sender believes their ransom scheme is over, if they know Nancy died and the leverage is gone, selling information about who did it for a much smaller amount is a different kind of transaction than the original ransom. It is the transaction of someone who has nothing left to sell except information, and who wants some financial return for that information, even if the original scheme failed. Whether this is the original sender selling their own identity at a discount, or a third party who has genuine knowledge of the abductors and is monetizing that knowledge, or a sophisticated fraud that simulates both, is the specific question that the FBI's response to this communication will determine. Nanos says it's fake. The FBI told TMZ there are things they don't want public. Those two positions are not necessarily contradictory. Nanos may be saying what he believes based on the information he has. The FBI may have a more specific concern about the new communication that goes beyond Nanos' assessment. Now let's go to the specific investigative significance of the 2 perpetrator claim, because this is the detail that the behavioral analysts and the investigative community have been circling around since February. The original porch guy, the masked, armed figure at Nancy's door at 1:47 a.m., is one person. The physical abduction of an 84-year-old woman from her home requires physical handling, carrying or assisting someone who cannot or will not walk voluntarily. A single person executing a nighttime abduction, managing a vehicle, and leaving within the time frame that the pacemaker and camera evidence suggest happened is logistically possible, but operationally complex. The behavioral analysis of the crime has consistently suggested coordination. The specific preparation, The mask, the weapon, the camera tampering, the planned approach and exit is not the behavior of a completely improvised single-person operation. The second ransom note said, "We are truly sorry." The plural "we" that has been noted since the note's contents were disclosed. 2 people. The new letter claims 2. The second note's language implied more than 1. The behavioral analysis has been consistent with more than 1. If the communication is authentic, if the sender genuinely has photographs of both people involved, with names, addresses, and ages, the investigation is not looking for the first name it has never had. It is potentially confirming names that the DNA, the blockchain, and the genealogy have been building toward through forensic processes for 147 days. Nanos says it's fake. The FBI told TMZ there are certain things they don't want shared publicly. And somewhere, a phone is allegedly stashed in a secure location. Easy to find if you know where to look. Turned off, with a video of Nancy. On the day that was probably her last. Day 147. 1 Bitcoin, $60,000. Names, addresses, ages, a video. Nanos says it's another one of those. TMZ's executive producer says the FBI doesn't want them to share everything publicly. Both things can be true, and the specific tension between them is where this investigation currently lives. Let me go deeper into what the FBI's specific response to this new communication tells us about how they are treating it. Because the specific framing, certain things the FBI doesn't want them to share publicly, is the most important single data point in evaluating whether this letter is authentic or fraudulent. When the FBI dismisses a fraudulent communication in a high-profile case, the standard response is one of 2 things. Either silence, no comment, no engagement, move on, or a specific public statement identifying the communication as fraudulent and potentially referencing charges filed against the sender. The FBI has arrested people for sending fraudulent ransom notes and extortion communications in high-profile cases before. Nanos referenced exactly this. I think the FBI has done a number of arrests for false or fake ransom notes. If the FBI was completely satisfied that this new letter is fraudulent, the expected response would be either silence or action. Not the specific instruction to TMZ's executive producer that there are certain things the FBI doesn't want shared publicly. That specific instruction, the FBI managing what TMZ is disclosing about this new communication, is the response of an agency that considers the communication potentially sensitive, not necessarily authentic, but sensitive, containing information that, if disclosed, could compromise something the FBI is protecting. What could that something be? There are a limited number of possibilities. The first possibility is that the communication contains information that is accurate, that the sender genuinely has case-specific knowledge, and that disclosing what they know publicly would compromise the investigation's ability to use that knowledge. If the phone actually exists, and the video actually shows Nancy with one of the abductors, and the FBI is trying to locate the phone before the sender moves it or destroys it, public disclosure of the phone's existence and the terms for its retrieval might cause the sender to change their plans. The second possibility is that the communication contains disinformation, deliberately false information designed to test the FBI's response or to misdirect the investigation, but that the FBI's specific response strategy to this disinformation is sensitive. The specific way they are engaging with or not engaging with this sender might be compromised by public disclosure. The third possibility is that the FBI is managing a transaction, evaluating whether to pay the 1 Bitcoin demand for the phone's location and passcode, and that public disclosure of the negotiation would complicate it. The investigation has previously transferred $152 in Bitcoin to the earlier ransom wallet in an apparent attempt to maintain contact with the sender. Whether they are considering a larger transaction with this new communication is a specific investigative decision that public disclosure would complicate. Each of these possibilities suggests that the FBI's response to this new letter is something more specific than dismissal. And the combination of Nanos' public skepticism and the FBI's specific request for information management creates the exact picture of an investigation managing 2 simultaneous truths. publicly expressing skepticism to discourage fraud and imitation, while privately treating the communication with a degree of operational seriousness. Now let's also address TMZ founder Harvey Levin's specific challenge to the sender. Because the specific public challenge Levin issued, "Get me a screen grab that proves you're not a liar," is itself an investigative move. Levin said directly to the sender, "Give us proof, a screen grab of the abductor's information, something that demonstrates the phone and its contents are real before TMZ takes the communication further." This challenge serves two purposes. First, it filters out generic fraud, someone who has invented the phone and its contents cannot produce a screen grab of information that does not exist. Second, it potentially draws out the sender. If they are genuine, the challenge creates an opportunity for them to demonstrate their credibility without fully revealing their hand. The sender's response to this challenge will be the next development in this specific thread. If they produce a screen grab that contains verifiable case-specific information that is accurate and specific to the actual crime, the credibility of the communication increases dramatically. If they go silent, if the emails stop, the probability of fraud increases. Either way, Levin's challenge is the specific move that will determine whether this communication continues to develop or is closed off as another fraud. The sender cannot be reached by email. Communications only arrive when they choose to send them. So TMZ is waiting. The FBI is managing what TMZ can share. Nanos says it's fake. And a phone is allegedly stashed somewhere easy to find if you know where to look. Now let's also examine what the specific timing of this new letter tells us about the sender's awareness of the case's public narrative. Because the letter arrived on June 26th, just 4 days after the second ransom note's contents were publicly disclosed for the first time. The second note's disclosure on June 22nd produced a massive national news cycle. She perished shortly after she was taken. She is buried in nature now. We are truly sorry. These 3 sentences dominated true crime coverage for days. And on June 26th, in the immediate wake of that disclosure, a new letter arrived at TMZ from the same email address, with the same Bitcoin address reference, and new specific claims: 2 perpetrators, a phone with a video, names and addresses. The timing raises a question. Is this communication a response to the second note's disclosure? Is the sender, whoever they are, reactivating because the public conversation about the case has been reignited by the note's contents? The original sender of the ransom notes, if this is the same person, would have known the second note's contents were going to become public eventually. They may have been monitoring the coverage and may have made a specific decision to re-engage when the public narrative reached a level of intensity that makes their communication more likely to be taken seriously. Or this is a different person, a third party who is opportunistically exploiting the renewed media attention around the case, using the second note's disclosure as a launching pad for a fraudulent demand. The specific authentication mechanism, the same email address, the same Bitcoin address reference, the explicit denial of connection to the Mexico tip, is consistent with either scenario. The original sender would use the same address as before because it establishes their authenticity. A sophisticated fraud could simulate those elements by doing basic research into what has been publicly reported about previous TMZ communications. The FBI has the emails. The FBI has the Bitcoin addresses. The FBI knows which elements of the previous communications were public and which were private. The specific investigation of this new letter will turn on whether its contents include information that could only have come from someone with genuine knowledge, information that was not public and that only the actual sender of the earlier authenticated communications would know. If the new letter contains such information, it is almost certainly from the same source as before. If it does not, if everything in the new letter could have been assembled from public reporting, the fraud probability increases substantially. Nanos says it's fake. The FBI is managing what TMZ can share. The truth is, somewhere in the specific evidentiary evaluation that the FBI is conducting right now. Day 147. The letter is real. The phone may or may not be real. The video may or may not exist. The names and addresses may or may not be on that phone. But the FBI has not dismissed it entirely, and in a case that has been running for 147 days without a named suspect, The specific tension between Nanos' skepticism and the FBI's information management is the most specific indicator of where this development actually stands. 1 Bitcoin, $60,000. Easy to find if you know where to look. Nanos says it's another one of those. The FBI told TMZ there are certain things they don't want shared publicly. Both things can be true. Now let's go to what Sheriff Nanos said this week about the broader state of the investigation. Because the same Nanos who dismissed the new letter as another fake also made a specific and public commitment that has not received the attention it deserves. He said, "I believe, at some point in time, we will make an arrest on this case." That statement, from the sheriff who has been leading the investigation since February, who has access to the full investigative record that the public does not have, who has been careful and measured in his public communications throughout, is the most direct public commitment to a future arrest that Nanos has made since this case began. Not might make an arrest. Not hoping to make an arrest. I believe we will make an arrest. At some point in time. The specific qualifier, at some point in time, is the honest acknowledgement of uncertainty about timing. Nanos is not saying imminent. He is saying eventual. But the belief that an arrest will come is stated without qualification. What is the basis of that belief? It is in the evidence. The DNA found at the scene is being separated and identified. The investigation relies on labs for the digital part of the case. The forensic processes are tedious, running at a snail's pace, but doing exactly what they need to do. Nanos also revealed this week a specific investigative strategy that has not been widely reported. Cataloged video footage. The FBI collected 10,000 hours of video from the greater Tucson area in the weeks following Nancy's disappearance. Nanos says investigators have been cataloging this footage, organizing it in a way that, when a suspect is identified, allows them to rapidly cross-reference the suspect's movements against the video record. Connecting all the pieces. That is how Nanos described it. The video catalog is the mechanism for connecting a suspect identity, once the DNA or the blockchain or the tip produces a name, to the physical evidence of their presence in the area around Nancy's home before, during, and after the abduction. 10,000 hours of video. Cataloged. Ready to be searched. The moment the investigation produces a name, that name goes into the catalog and the cross-referencing begins. Nanos believes the arrest will come. The catalog is ready for the name. Now let's address the specific investigative context of the new letter within the broader communications landscape of this case. Because the history of communications TMZ has received is important context for evaluating the June 26th letter. TMZ founder Harvey Levin announced that his outlet had received another email from the man who says he knows who Nancy Guthrie's kidnappers are and can lead the FBI to those kidnappers for 1 Bitcoin. That amounts to roughly $60,000. The writer specifically said they are not the idiot who recently called in a tip about the burial site in Mexico. The specific denial of connection to the Mexico tip is worth examining carefully. The Mariposa tip, which produced the search that found a grave that had not previously existed, was a separate communication channel sent to a Mexican volunteer organization rather than to a U.S. media outlet. The new TMZ letter writer is explicitly distinguishing themselves from that tip. Why would someone sending a communication to TMZ need to clarify that they are not the person who sent a tip to a Mexican search organization? Unless they are aware of the Mexico tip's public narrative and are concerned that their own communication will be dismissed in the same way. The specific denial suggests someone who is following the case closely enough to know about the Mariposa tip and who is anticipating that they will be lumped together with what they view as a less credible communication. That specific awareness is the behavioral fingerprint of someone in the periphery of this case. Someone who has been watching the public narrative develop, who knows the landscape of competing tips and communications, and who wants their own communication to be evaluated separately from what they view as unreliable information. TMZ executive producer Charles Latibaudiere said there are certain things the FBI doesn't want them to share publicly at this point about this new communication. There is no email address for them to contact the sender. They simply wait for new emails to arrive. The sender controls the timing and content of all communications. That specific dynamic, where the investigation is managed entirely on the sender's timeline, arriving without notice, without a reliable return channel, is the operational structure of someone who is trying to extract maximum benefit from their information while minimizing their exposure. They cannot be reached. They send when they choose. And they want 1 Bitcoin before they share the phone's location. Whether that phone exists is the specific question that cannot be answered from the outside. What can be said is that the FBI has told TMZ there are things they do not want publicly shared. And that specific instruction suggests the FBI is treating this communication with a degree of operational seriousness. Now let's also address the specific significance of the 2 perpetrator claim in the context of what Kidnapper and other behavioral experts have been saying. Because the claim that 2 people were involved in Nancy's abduction is not new. It has been part of the behavioral analysis since early in the case. Jennifer Kidnapper, the former 28-year FBI agent who has been the most specific public voice on the investigative dimensions of this case, developed a theory that connects Savannah Guthrie's use of religious language to the possible presence of scripture in the ransom notes. Her specific analytical framework for this case has consistently suggested someone with education, planning capability, and specific knowledge of the Guthrie family. The behavioral analysis of the crime scene is consistent with at least 2 people. One person executing the physical abduction, while another monitors, drives, or manages logistics. The original ransom notes used the plural we. The second notes, we are truly sorry, used the plural. And now the new letter claims 2 people were responsible, providing names, addresses, and ages for both. Whether the new letter's 2-person claim is accurate, fraudulent, or somewhere in between, the claim itself is consistent with what the behavioral analysis has been pointing toward for 147 days. Law enforcement sources told TMZ this week that investigators are no closer this week than they were 2 weeks ago to identifying a suspect. No closer this week than 2 weeks ago. That specific assessment, from sources close to the investigation, talking to a media outlet that has been closely tracking this case, is the honest acknowledgement that the forensic processes are running but have not yet crossed the threshold. The DNA deconvolution is ongoing. The blockchain analysis is ongoing. The genealogy process at Estrella is ongoing. None of them have produced the specific identification that would allow Nanos to move from, I believe we will make an arrest, to we have made an arrest. And a new letter arrived claiming to have the names, addresses, and ages of 2 people responsible on a phone in a secure location. Easy to find if you know where to look. Available for 1 Bitcoin. No closer this week, but a letter with names on a phone. Day 147. The investigation continues. The catalog is ready for the name. Nanos believes the arrest will come, and there is a phone somewhere, turned off, easy to find if you know where to look, that may or may not contain the answer. If you have any information about Nancy Guthrie's disappearance, contact the FBI at 1-800-CALL-FBI, 1-800-225-5324. Submit tips at tips.fbi.gov. Call the Pima County Sheriff's Department at 520-351-4900. The combined reward is over $1.2 million. Completely anonymous. Hit the like button. Subscribe to Forensic Disconnect. Drop a comment. Do you think the phone with the video is real? And what do you think the FBI is not letting TMZ share? We read every single comment. Day 147. There is a phone. Easy to find if you know where to look. We will be back tomorrow.